Today, you're going to understand why trying to overwork and exhausting yourself to fix a relationship is actually a nervous system pattern that is keeping you holding on to a narcissist, and you're going to learn how you can shift it. Hey, and welcome back. Have you been feeling yourself get pulled into this hyper-productive fix-it mode place and feel like you can't pull yourself out of it? Maybe this looks like refreshing your phone compulsively or going down the YouTube rabbit holes or binge listening to podcasts about narcissism and trauma bonds and codependency and replaying every conversation, convinced that if you just try harder, that you'll be able to fix it. You'll be able to fix the dynamic. You'll be able to fix him. You'll be able to fix the way it makes you feel. You're very stuck on, I need to do more. I need to try harder. I need to fix it. If this feels like you, you're in the right place because I am this way too. And in this episode, I'm sharing a very personal insight into what I've been going through recently that has cracked me open in a way that I was not expecting. What stopped me in my tracks and what really resonated as something that I want to share with you today is how familiar it felt, how it mirrors almost beat for beat what I and so many of you have described as living through a relationship with a narcissist. So this episode is not so much a teaching episode. It's a very deeply personal, honest one. So really my intention for you with this episode is to share some of myself. And in this parallel that I've drawn between what's happening in my life right now and what happened in my narcissistic relationship, I really want you to understand why your hardworking parts go into overdrive in narcissistic relationships and what they're trying to protect you from. And I want you to really hold on to the belief that there is an unexpected shift that happens when you finally stop forcing something that you never had control of in the first place. So I'm going to share all about that in the story that I'm about to share. I want you to stick around to the end because I always pull an oracle card, and this can give you a message that you can use to stay more conscious in your healing this week. Okay, so let's take a deep breath and begin. Okay, so I'm going to take another deep breath. This is a vulnerable one. Where do I want to start? I want to introduce you to the part of me who has been so practiced throughout my life of seeing a problem, fixating on the problem, feeling panic around needing to solve the problem, bleeding herself dry, trying to solve the problem, and feeling like she fails every time. Feeling like there's no amount of trying that feels successful, which only amplifies her desire to try harder. And this part of me will try and try and try and fail and fail and fail, and it will repeat this cycle over and over and over again. And I will eventually work myself into living in more of a consistent level of panic than safety, than nervous system feeling regulated. It will feel dysregulated. So there's a part of me who's sneaky. She comes in a little bit quiet at the beginning of, oh yeah, we're just going to research this thing and figure this out. And then she turns up into this panic mode, this place that I'm living in. So what's happening right now in my life is I have a toddler. She is 18 months old, and there is a lot to learn about raising a human. There's a lot to learn about teething and tantrums and diaper rashes and potty training and how you're supposed to say no without saying no and how you're supposed to gently parent but also hold boundaries. Right? This is a part of life that we are not taught how to do. And then we're thrown into it and it's like, what the fuck is happening? So there's that piece of trying to figure out how to parent the way that we want to parent and how to execute those things. And then how to tend to myself while Faye, my daughter, is doing what toddlers do and throwing a tantrum or having a fit or not liking whatever's happening. So that's one part of my life that's happening right now that kind of has me on like I'd say a medium level amount of nervous system activation where you're just kind of constantly in it. You're just constantly on guard. You're constantly also scanning the environment to make sure she's not going to kill herself. because toddlers are just always trying to hurt themselves. It's like little drunk people walking around that you have to make sure that they don't hurt themselves. So there's that sort of baseline that's happening with my nervous system. And then on top of that, when I came back to work in 2025, after I took maternity leave, I came back with the very clear intention of working part-time. And in my head, I was like, okay, well, I'll be working part-time. That means that I'll have half of the clients that I did when I was working full-time. And 2024 is one of my best years ever. And so I've been sort of in this place of thinking that I should be able to produce what I used to produce before I was a mom. So I had been working with that mindset, not really factoring into the equation of how much of my capacity is diminished because I'm a mom, and I'm bringing a different amount into the hours that I'm actually working. I'm working about 25 hours right now, and I was trying to put in 45 hours to this 25-hour window that I have. I put my schedule into Claude and was having Claude help me figure out how to manage my time. And it was like, what are you doing? You don't have that many hours in your week. So it was like an eye-opening moment for me to see that reflected back to me, that there was a part of me that believed that I could do it because I had done it. And what was also driving that, back to the part of me that I introduced you to in the beginning, that was seeing broken parts of the business and trying to fix them. Trying to fixate on, oh, if I change this and I do that, and maybe I'm doing this wrong and doing this wrong, then I will be able to bring in more clients. Mind you, still working part-time. But that part of me was very fixated on getting the amount of clients that I had before I had a child, when I was working full-time. So as you can imagine, where this story is going is that this was not working out. This was happening, like I could feel myself being pulled into these panicky places. I could feel the heightened nervous system. And I'm doing my nervous system practices. So I teach nervous system regulation to my clients who are moving through these narcissistic relationships, healing from wounded parts of themselves. So I'm using my tools, and I'm also still at this very heightened level. Like it just kept feeling like I couldn't replenish myself. I couldn't fill the cup up fast enough for how much was draining out between being a mom and owning a business. And everything that I was trying in both of those parts of my life were not working, quote unquote. I was coming from that panicked place again of this part of me seeing that there's a problem, seeing that it needs to be fixed, trying harder, and that's still not producing the result that I wanted. So I started feeling really down. I started kind of with that flat line of not being able to feel joyful moments, not being able to feel super present with my daughter. And sometimes with my daughter, I was like wishing that I could be trying to fix the problem with work. And it was not a good place to be. And physically, my hormones were kind of whacking out, and I was really finding myself ugly crying a lot of the time. And if you've read some recent emails, I've shared a little bit about what that looks like for me and how being a mom triggers these parts in me, and how there have been a lot of times where I've had to stop fully what I'm doing and go and do some EFT tapping and regulate and try to get a handle on this part of me that feels very out of control. And there's a lot of parts happening. So the part I'm focusing on in this episode for these purposes is one part, but there are many parts of me that are popping up all the time, specifically in motherhood. So I'm feeling really panicked. I'm feeling really stressed out. I'm feeling like there's not enough time to figure out all of these problems that are happening, right? And I'm categorizing them as problems that need to be solved. And I just get to this point where I was working one day and I was trying to do some analyzation around the podcast and do some just numbers, which always kind of throws me into like, I don't love doing that part of business. Much rather be with clients and serve my medicine that way. So I just hit like a breaking point of trying to figure this out, not being able to figure this out, and closed my computer and went and sat. I have a couch in my office, and I just was crying. I was just like, I can't keep doing this. I could not keep trying to do the same thing and expecting a different result. With women that I work with who are going through this in a narcissistic relationship, this moment of realization is what I call the fuck this shift, where you're like, fuck this. I cannot keep doing this. This is killing me. This is not working. Something has to change. What came to me on the couch was that there had to be a radical shift. And I knew that this radical shift was me slowing down and taking a step back and really prioritizing my nervous system work and really prioritizing refilling my cup so that I have the capacity to hold space for these beautiful women that I get to serve. I knew that it meant that. And that feels very threatening to this part of me who wants to go fast and wants to keep trying and wants to figure it out. And what I felt on the couch that day was like, okay, this feels scary to slow down, but that can't be as bad as what I'm feeling right now. The pain of where I was surpassed the fear of where I was going to go if I actually allowed myself the space and time to slow down. And as somebody who, like, part of my identity has always been that I am hardworking, that I am productive, that once I put my mind to something, I make it happen. And so to be in this fuck this shift moment and to feel like, okay, well, I can't keep trying that. That's not working anymore. It was not just a fear of stepping back and what that meant, but it was a fear of, well, if I'm not that person, then who am I? If I can't do this, if I can't figure this out, if I can't solve this in the ways that I used to be able to really rely on my intellect and my drive and maybe a lot of that panic energy, then what the fuck? Feeling like my identity in that moment was in shambles, like just crumbled and not knowing who I was now. And it became so clear that who I am right now is not who I was in 2024. It's not that I'm trying to get back to being that person. It's needing to reevaluate and reorient and recalibrate to who I am right now and the situation in my life with my daughter and my choosing of working part-time right now, which feels like when you say it out loud, it's like, yeah, duh. But for me, I was really operating in that place of I should be able to because I've always been able to. And so it was a very humbling moment. It was many moments, because I had this moment on the couch and then I had the moment when I'm talking to my husband about it. And then I have the moments when I'm sharing my insight with friends. And it's just like, I keep putting these pieces together of like, okay, yeah, I need to take a beat. I need to take a couple months and like, let myself just do what feels good to do in the business instead of trying to fix it, instead of coming into these things that I'm doing with the podcast and emails and I don't know, just different stuff that's happening in the business. I need to come to it with a different energy. So I had to choose something radically different because the tool that I was trying was not working. And I talk a lot about this in relation to women who are trying to stop going back to a narcissistic person or to leave for the first time a narcissistic person. They're trying to think themselves there. They're trying to use their mind. They're trying to figure it out. And oftentimes, if you're in this place, you're trying more. You're trying harder. You're thinking that if there's just more that you can do, more that you can learn, then it's going to take you out of the situation that you're in. And so the parallel here, and in my case, I'm going to use my example of being in the narcissistic relationship. It's almost beat for beat. So the first thing that feels really familiar in what I'm going through with being a mom and owning a business, what feels familiar with the relationship with my ex is this panic. The panic of trying and failing, trying harder, trying to do more research, trying to understand more about codependency, trying to bring more skills into our fights that we were having, trying to see more therapists, trying to do more energy work, trying all the things and nothing working. So trying and failing, which it was like a perfect puzzle piece fit for me to get really sucked into this type of narcissistic relationship, because narcissistic relationships really mock trying, right? He, my ex, saw me trying and saw that as a vulnerable part to continue to hook me in with like little bids of things that were going to change or making it somehow a bigger problem that I then had to solve. It really just fit perfectly together to keep me in that. So I did that for a long time. And it felt over and over and over again, when I would try something and it wouldn't work, it would feel like slamming my head on a brick wall. Just like, what is missing? What am I missing? Why am I not able to do this? So that's the first piece that felt really familiar. The second piece was feeling this baseline survival mode in my nervous system, feeling stressed out and then hitting peaks of burnout, but just like a baseline of being stressed, being hypervigilant, being aware that there was problems to fix that I couldn't fix. It was just cortisol pumping and adrenaline pumping all the time in my body. And with that relationship, I was also having physical symptoms. The symptoms looked different, where I was losing hair and I was having this weird like burning sensation in my mouth. And it was unexplainable, but it was, now looking back, like very much attributed to the heightened stress state that I was in. The third thing that felt familiar is the fuck this shift that I had. When I finally hit that point of being unable to continue trying and failing, unable to continue self-sacrificing, unable to continue living in this heightened stress state, this nervous system state, and really having that, it was like a crystal clear moment where, you know, when they use the metaphor of being in a fog in a narcissistic relationship, it was like the clouds parted and I was like, I can't keep doing this. I see so clearly his manipulation. I see the gaslighting. I see the disrespect. I see the betrayal. I see too much to be able to stay here. And I had to make a shift. And in thinking in that moment of how am I going to say to him, this is over, and choose the really hard path that felt unfamiliar, leaving felt terrifying on many levels because I didn't know what it was going to look like. I thought I was going to be alone forever. I didn't trust that I was going to be able to get through it. I didn't trust that I was going to be able to figure out who I was outside of this relationship because it got so tangled and I lost myself completely. And even though that felt so scary, staying felt scarier. It felt, I couldn't do it. I couldn't make myself stay knowing what I knew. And so there had to be that shift moment. There had to be me saying, I can't do this. This relationship is over. This no longer looks the way that it looked before. And in this, what also felt familiar is that rock bottom moment where everything that I thought I was in a relationship, everything that I thought relationships were, everything that I thought people were not capable of or were capable of, all of it was obliterated. And I remember after breaking up with him and in the early days of the post-separation abuse that I endured, it was just like, I didn't think that more could be stripped away, more reality, more trust, more belief. Like I saw the absolute worst that a person could be to another person, and receiving that didn't make sense, on top of being really heartbroken, on top of having my identity shattered, on top of having a relationship of 4 years be shattered that I thought I was going to marry this person. It was a complete dismantling of everything that I thought was true. And that's a very fucking scary place to be. with also the awareness that, okay, I need to work on my codependency. I need to work on my people pleasing. I need to work on why I silenced myself for so many years. I need to work on why I gave him so many chances, right? It was like clarity around how to take ownership in my part of the relationship, which also felt scary and something that I didn't know if I had the strength to do. So it felt like I was burned all the way to the ground. I know the metaphor of the phoenix rising is maybe overused, but it really did feel like that. It was like, okay, there's ash here. So what is going to compost back into the ground that's going to nurture some sort of seedling and then roots for me to grow from? Because I couldn't see it. And what happened as I put one step in front of the other and took the steps that I knew I had to, but also felt terrifying, is I did start to see that seedling come up from the ground. And what I became after that relationship was so, like, I would never have thought that I could become that person in a million years. If you had rewound me and said, you're going to meet this person, you're going to have a really intense love bombing narcissistic relationship, and then it's going to end, and then you're going to go through some post-separation abuse and become aware of all the abuse that was happening in the relationship, but then you're going to become this like wildflower of a woman afterwards, I would have been like, no thanks. I couldn't have expected that after that dismantling came this, like, really the most precious thing that came out of that was being able to feel my inner child and feel these parts of me that were really needing me to take care of them. And really, for the first time ever, understanding what it meant to take radical responsibility for yourself and to protect this little girl inside of me, just like a lioness would protect a lion cub. It was like, oh, she's the most important. That she's more important than people pleasing, than not having boundaries, than keeping the peace, than walking on eggshells. She's more important. And I'm no longer going to be willing to let somebody hurt her. And that was such a foundational part of everything that then came afterwards, because learning to take care of her, it gave me the self-respect to start to build the self-trust, to start to build the self-love. It was a very layered process for me in learning how to love myself and learning how to believe that I was worthy and deserving and enough and all of the things that was a really necessary piece. So who I became, which is why I call my program Becoming, is because you going through this process is becoming a version of you that you want to be, the version of you that you couldn't comprehend being in the relationship or maybe before. It's like, how do we create this new version of you? And I'm feeling that in another part of my life right now. I'm like, oh, okay, so I've done this before. That's one piece of, I don't know, something that's giving me some sanity or some sense of control or a sense of, what's the right word? Like, that I'm strong enough to do this. I'm like, okay, I've been dismantled before. I've had my identity shed before. This is another winter. This is another winter where I am underground, where I am trying to be okay in this fertile void that's around me, trusting that whatever was composting from before is going to nourish my roots and going to help me sprout and grow and then bloom again. So I share this with you because when we work with parts of ourselves, when we go through these experiences where we are really feeling this part of us driving our behavior, in my case, and probably in your case in some level, it's this part of you that wants to fix it, that wants to try harder. She's trying to solve the problem, because solving the problem is going to take away this whole other piece of mess of having to accept reality and having to feel dismantled and then having to change some sort of behavior and then having to rebuild. She's just like, I'm going to short circuit that and I'm going to just fix the problem because that's going to make everything feel better. And this part is likely coming from a wounded place. like for me, this is a very old part of me that I recognized in my narcissistic relationship. I recognize her here. It's even though I was able to work with her when I was coming out of the narcissistic relationship, she didn't go fully away. And I think this is a common misconception of parts work and of working on yourself is I'll just get rid of that part of me. And I believe that that's not possible. What we do is we find curiosity around the part. We find understanding of what the part's trying to do. And then we come in and we give that part that sense of safety without her having to use whatever tactic she was going to use. So if you are trying to fix and you're overworking and you're exhausting yourself, trying to solve this problem that's not solvable, that part of you really needs you to somehow signal to her that she is safe, even with a problem there. And that you, as the adult self, as the self energy, can find the solution to help with the problem that might look different than trying harder and trying harder and trying harder. In my case, I had to find the solution of, I'm going to step back. I'm going to go slow. I'm going to break down all of the parts of my business, and I'm going to do the things that are absolutely necessary and not try to fit 45 hours into a 25-hour week. I found a solution outside of what she wanted to do, which was try and fail. If you don't find curiosity around this part, she's going to keep driving. She's going to keep going and trying. And your frustration is going to get so big that likely you're going to hit this rock bottom moment anyway. You're going to hit that moment where it becomes clear that you can't. And so the more that you can try to notice beliefs or tendencies that are coming up for you with a sense of curiosity and trying to understand them, the more that you're going to help those parts feel unburdened. What's different now in the situation that I'm in with being a mother and working on my business is that I have the tools to be able to regulate my nervous system to help me tap into that curiosity and that compassion and that understanding around this sweet part of me that is just trying and failing. Understanding where she comes from, understanding the deeper motive that she has to keep me safe. And what happens when you practice this with nervous system work is that you feel that part of you come up quicker. You can get curiosity around that part quicker, and you can give that part what it needs more quickly so that you can shift your experience. So I was very eyes open with this part of me that was driving this overwhelm and this panic. And though it took me a while to come to that moment of okay, whoa, we need to take a step way back, I was more aware of what was happening than when I was coming out of the relationship with my narcissistic ex. I was very much sleepwalking. I was not aware of the parts of me that kept me driving in that relationship, that kept me trying harder, that kept me self-sacrificing, that kept me small. I wasn't as aware of those parts while I was in it, which allowed those parts to stay more forward and driving my behavior more of the time, versus now where I can recognize a part and then do a nervous system regulation technique, do some sort of tapping, do something that's going to give me clarity around those parts. Part of my program is something called the Return to Self practice. And this is a library of nervous system regulation videos that you can use anytime you feel a part present. Because anytime that a part is present, we are dysregulated on some level, whether it's hyperarousal or hypoarousal. And we want to bring regulation back into the body so that you can tap into that self energy. So that's why it's called Return to Self, because you use a nervous system practice and then you can feel that self energy more clearly. And when we're in self energy, we feel clear, we feel confident, we feel courageous, we feel compassionate, we feel curious, and it gives us that space to be able to then tend. If you think about a mother tending to a child, sometimes when the child is freaking out, we need to go and have a minute of regulation practice to come into a self-energy place to be able to tend to the child. And that's what you're doing internally too, is you're regulating so that you can come into that self-energy place to tend to your inner part. So I guess what I want to say at the base of all of this is that the nervous system work is critical. And there are different ways that this shows up in our life. The parallel that I'm feeling is a very clear one between the narcissistic relationship and what's happening with being a mom and in my business. And when you learn how to tend to your nervous system, you can shift so many aspects of your life. I really believe that if I didn't have this tool or the many nervous system tools that I use and that I teach, I don't think that I would be able to hold myself in the discomfort of slowing down because it feels like a threat. My body is like, this is not good. We can't just leave this problem over here unsolved. And it's fighting the very nature of how I found safety. So I need to replace that tendency with a way to feel safe when I'm choosing something different. And that is what I'm helping clients do. And the beauty here, like, I'm not even through this and I can already see the gratitude. I can already see how being taken to my knees again in this way, in my life right now, is helping me relate to you who is on your knees in a narcissistic relationship. Even though I've had that experience, it's like another layer of reinforcing that I understand how to help you in that place because I'm doing it again from another place, and how I can trust my capacity as a woman, as my strength as a woman, to become another version of myself, and that this becoming gets to be something that we continue to do. And once you have the foundation of knowing how to do that, then you get to meet yourself there with each new leveling up. That's really what this is. It's a new calibration. And that's always going to feel scary at first because it's unfamiliar. So if you're feeling like the little seedling that has not yet found the sunlight, I'm with you. I'm with you in a different vein of life, but I'm with you. So that's what I wanted to share today, and share a little piece of my vulnerability for all of the women who are so courageous that come on calls with me and share their vulnerability, of all my clients that show up ready and willing to trust me to be vulnerable and to move through some really, really heavy and tender stuff. It's so beautiful. So thank you for holding my vulnerability with yours. Okay, let's pull a card and see what is the message that comes out for you today. It's rest. The card is rest. Haha, universe, I see you. Rest calls you here. Spiritual rest, bodily rest, both. You cannot continue to run, push, lift, or serve. You cannot continue to live at the bottom of your exhale. You must rest. Find it. Create the space to allow yourself to unplug, quiet the mind, soften the body. Connect to the divine spirit that offers you unconditional love and respite from all of your mind-made worries. Put to rest the expectations of others, the shoulds, the guilt, the imposter. Sink into yourself. Exhale, relax, release, rest, rest, rest. So good. It's such a cool direct feedback, and really building that trust with the universe that doing the thing that feels scary is going to give you the thing that you really want. So I'm holding on to that. I hope you can hold on to that. And until I see you in the next episode, please remember that you are not alone.